Alright, so welcome to this video. We're going to go ahead and look at completing the square, or what we called in class level 2 type problems. So the problem that we're looking at here, the 2n squared plus 8n plus 4 is equal to negative 2. That's actually problem number 1 on your worksheet or on your assignment that you'll be turning in on Monday. So let's go ahead and work through this problem. And what I've done is I've also written the steps out here on the side, so hopefully this helps you out. Again, these should be in your notebook, but in case you don't have your notebook with you, they're right here. So step 1 is to make sure that the problem that you're going to solve is written in this form: the ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to some number. So we got to make sure that it's written in that form. And if we look at the problem that we have, it looks like it is written in that form. So step 1 for us is good. Step 2 is that you got to multiply by 4a. Now what that means is, remember, this here is a, so a here is equal to 2. This here is your b, so b is equal to 8. And this is your c, and c is equal to 4. Now what we really care about at this moment is a. So we just care about a. Now what is a? Well, a is 2. So that means that 4a is 4 times 2, and 4 times that number is 8. Now I call this in class our magic number, and pretty soon you're going to see why in the next couple of lessons that we have this coming week. But this here, this number 8, that is what we multiply everything by. So I'm going to multiply everything by the number 8. And what that's going to allow me to do is that's going to allow me to create some really nice numbers so that when I complete my square, I don't have to worry about fractions, I don't have to worry about much. It'll just complete very, very nicely. So let's go ahead and see what multiplying by 8 does. Well, what is 8? So let's take this step by step. What is 8 times that 2? So 8 times 2 is that 16 n squared. And again, I'm just going to distribute. 8 times 8 gives us, well, positive 64 n. And then 8 times 4, well, that's just, let's see, 32. And then 8 times negative 2. Well, 8 times negative 2 is negative 16. Alright, so that's step 2. We multiplied everything by 4a. Now we're on to our last and final step, and that's to complete the square. Alright, so let's go ahead and complete this square. Well, to complete the square, let's make a square. Alright, so it's going to look something like this. So here's my square. Again, it might not be perfect, but that's the best that I can do. And so what I'm going to do is start filling in my square. So again, the 16n squared, I'm going to place that in my first box here, 16n squared. Now what I need to think about is what two numbers multiply to 16. Now you can say 8 times 2, you could say 1 times 16, but what I'm really looking for is the same number times the same number, or the square root of 16. So in other words, 4 times 4. So when I complete my square, I have to have the same length up here and the same thing here. 4 times 4 is 16. Also, n times n is 16. I'm sorry, n times n is n squared. So 4n times 4n takes care of that. So I'm going to put a little check mark that we've taken care of the 16n squared. The next thing I do is I look at my 64n. And what I'm going to do is cut the 64n in half, or divide it by 2. Now 64 divided by 2 is 32. So that means that I'm going to put 32 n's here and 32 n's there. Now I just need to ask myself, well, what's going to go here? So whatever number goes here, when I multiply this number by 4, I should get 32. So 4 times something is 32. That has to be 8. 4 times 8 is 32. Does it work here? Well, this number, again, times 4n has to give me 32. 32n. Well, that's also 8. 8 times 4n is also 32n. So then all I do is finish off my last box. And by the way, I'm going to put a little check on that 64n. Make sure that we got it taken care of. And now I move to my last box. Alright. So to get the last box, again, I'm going to multiply 8 times this 8 here. And that gives me 64. So did I take care of the 32? Well, not quite, because I don't have 64 here. If this was a 64, if this number was 64, then I could just put a check and be done with it. Unfortunately, this number is not 64. So how do I make it 64? Well, I can just add 32. And if I add 32, that'll make it a 64, and I'm done. I got all my checks. Everything that's in this box is right here. The only issue is that if I add 32 to one side of an equation, I better add it to the other side as well. So if I add it to the other side, negative 16 plus 32, well, that is 16. Well, now I'm ready, and I've completed my square. So now what my next step is I use my square. Well, the 16n squared is here. The 64n was here and here. The 32 that transformed into a 64 is here. So now what I have is, well, I have the 4n plus 8 that I used squared. Right, so that's the square. It's this side times this side. That's going to give me everything that's inside the square, which is everything that I have here. So that's 4n plus 8 squared is equal to, now what is it equal to? Now be very careful. It is not equal to negative 16. Remember, we added 32 to that. So it equals our new value, which is a positive 16. Now what we have here is a level 1 type of problem. So we saw this in class. We said this is a level 1 problem. And we solved a bunch of level 1 problems in class together. So let's go ahead and solve this one. So again, this is just going to be 4n plus 8. Again, remember, we take the square root, right? We take the square root of both sides. So this is going to be 4n plus 8 is equal to positive 4, right? Or negative 4. Those are the two solutions there. Now let's just solve for n. Well, if I want to solve for n, I'm going to take away n on both, take away 8 on both sides. So there we go. So let's see what we have. This is going to cancel out. What are we left with? Well, we're just left with 4n. We have 4 minus 8. 4 minus 8, that is negative 4. Or negative 4 minus 8. Negative 4 minus 8, that is negative 12. And finally, the last step to do here is just to divide by this 4. Divide by 4. Divide by 4. And we should have it. We should say that n is equal to negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1, or negative 12 divided by 4, that is negative 3. And those are the two solutions to our problem here. So I'm going to put a little box around that. Alright, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is create another video, and I'll pick a problem again from your worksheet. So stay tuned in the next video so that you can see how to do these types of problems, or at least so you can practice some of these problems.